Look, Elena, darling, some women are built for champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Others are better suited to cleaning up the mess after the party. Now, meet Tiffany. She understands ambition." The words cut deeper than any knife, meant to shatter the confidence of the woman standing across the opulent ballroom. Elena merely smiled, a slow, predatory curve of the lips that didn't reach her eyes. She watched her ex-husband, Marcus Thorne, preen beside his new, diamond-encrusted fiancée, believing he had won the war. But Marcus was about to learn that when you try to crush a queen, she doesn't weep. She simply reshuffles the chessboard. His smug moment of victory was about to turn into the most expensive mistake of his life, because in less than 5 minutes, Elena wasn't just going to be rich, she was going to own his future. The air inside the Grand Astor ballroom was thick with the scent of old money, expensive perfume, and the faint metallic tang of desperation. Crystal chandeliers, heavy as Roman crowns, cast diamond light onto hundreds of perfectly manicured guests, each a potential investor, rival or victim in the high-stakes game of Manhattan finance. Elias Vance stood near the colossal marble columns, holding a flute of mineral water that felt deceptively heavy in her hand. Her dress, a simple midnight blue silk sheath, was deliberately understated. She wasn't here to advertise wealth. She was here to witness a performance, and she preferred the shadows. Her eyes, the color of storm clouds, were fixed on the man who had once been her world and was now the bitter footnote in her history, Marcus Thorne. Marcus, a man whose ambition had always been far larger than his integrity, was holding court in the center of the room. At 42, he possessed the rugged, sharp-edged good looks of a man perpetually conscious of his own reflection. His tailored suit was the color of liquid smoke, and every gesture, the sweeping hand movements, the booming, forced laughter, was designed to project dominance. But tonight, Marcus wasn't alone. He was anchored to a human statement piece, Tiffany Sterling. Tiffany was barely 28. Her dress a shimmering rose-gold waterfall that seemed engineered to catch every beam of light. She was dazzling, vacuous, and possessed a laugh that sounded exactly like the clink of expensive glassware. She was, in every sense, the trophy Marcus had acquired to replace Elena's substance. Elena felt a dull ache, not of jealousy, but of professional pity. She remembered the Marcus she had married, a hungry, driven man with genuine ideas, a man who didn't need to purchase his confidence. The man before her now was a caricature, a walking billboard of the success he constantly feared losing. The moment she had been dreading and simultaneously anticipating arrived. Marcus spotted her. Marcus. His smile, already wide for the benefit of the room, sharpened into something malicious when he realized he had an audience for his cruel theatrics. He whispered something into Tiffany's ear, prompting another tinkling laugh, and then, with the deliberate, slow gait of a predator, he steered Tiffany toward Elena. "Elena, darling!" Marcus's voice was too loud, too cheerful, designed to draw attention. He wrapped an arm around Tiffany's waist, pulling her possessively close, as if Elena were planning a heist. Elena turned, allowing her expression to settle into a mask of polite indifference. "Marcus, you're making quite the splash tonight. I almost thought the Metropolitan Museum had loaned a new piece for the occasion." Her eyes flicked dismissively from Tiffany's oversized diamond necklace to Marcus's forced smirk. Tiffany, who seemed to view conversation as an exhausting necessity, managed a stiff, heavily rehearsed greeting. "Hi, Elena. Marcus has told me all about you. It's so lovely to finally meet the blueprint." The word hung in the air. Blueprint. The implication was clear. Elena was the rough sketch. Tiffany was the finished, superior product. It was a line that Marcus had undoubtedly fed her, perfectly calibrated to wound. Marcus seized the moment, leaning in conspiratorially toward Elena, though his words were loud enough for the small circle gathering nearby. "Yes, well, you know how it is. Tiffany has brought a certain refinement to my life that I didn't realize I was missing. She understands the importance of leverage. After all, when we were together, Elena, you were so focused on your quaint little non-profit work, your small-scale design firm, always resisting the real power game. He paused, letting his gaze sweep over her simple dress. You were a wonderful partner for the climb, I'll grant you that. But now that I'm standing at the summit, I need someone who truly belongs up here with me. Someone who understands that money isn't just earned, it's styled. Tiffany giggled on cue, adjusting the cuff of Marcus's sleeve as if claiming ownership. The massive engagement ring on her finger, large enough to qualify as a small satellite dish, glittered offensively. Elena took a slow sip of her water. The humiliation was a calculated assault, a final attempt by Marcus to rewrite their shared history and establish his dominance after their painful, messy divorce a year prior. He had walked away with the bulk of the liquid assets, leveraging his status in the public eye and Elena's quiet, private nature against her in the settlement. He believed he had taken everything she valued, her time, her loyalty, and her financial security. "It's a beautiful ring, Tiffany," Elena said calmly, addressing the fiancé directly, bypassing Marcus entirely. "Do you know the provenance of the stone? The clarity seems questionable, but the size certainly compensates." Tiffany's rehearsed smile vanished, replaced by a flash of genuine insecurity. "It's a 5-carat cushion cut. It's perfect." "Of course," Elena murmured, her gaze returning to Marcus, whose face was beginning to flush with annoyance. He hated when she ignored his bait. "Speaking of assets," Marcus cut in sharply, eager to redirect the focus back to his superior position, "I hear your former mentor, old Elias Vance, is finally gone. Shame. The poor old fool hung on for years. I tried to warn him about that outdated portfolio management, but he was always too sentimental, wasn't he? Still, I suppose you'll be getting a small token of remembrance from the estate, maybe enough for a new office chair." He chuckled, a cruel, dismissive sound. Elias Vance, the billionaire real estate titan and venture capitalist, had passed away 3 days ago. He was not only Elena's mentor, but the closest thing she had to family after her parents died. What Marcus didn't know, what no one knew, was the complex, deeply private relationship Elias and Elena had forged over the last decade. It wasn't just business, it was trust, loyalty, and a shared vision. "Elias was a man of immense foresight, Marcus," Elena replied, the sweetness of her voice contrasting sharply with the steel in her eyes. "He understood that value is often hidden, not displayed. He also understood the difference between a partnership and a parasite." Marcus bristled. "A partnership? Please. The man kept you on a tight leash, Elena. You waited on him hand and foot for a decade. A decade of your life gone. And what do you have to show for it? A small design firm while I'm finalizing my merger with the Sterling Group." He gestured toward Tiffany, emphasizing the implied connection. This was the peak of his hubris. This was the moment he believed he had delivered the final, crippling blow. He felt triumphant, powerful, utterly secure in his superior status. And that was precisely when the temperature in the room dropped by 10 degrees, at least for Marcus. Elena's eyes shifted past Marcus's shoulder. A tall, impeccably dressed man, carrying an expensive leather briefcase, was moving with singular purpose across the floor. He didn't stop to shake hands or exchange pleasantries. His trajectory was direct and unwavering. The man was Wallace "Wally" Finch, senior partner at Finch, Harding and Thorne, the latter Thorne being Marcus's influential yet estranged uncle. Wally was one of the most powerful corporate attorneys in the city, the kind of man who moved capital the way architects move stone. Marcus saw Wally, and a flicker of anxiety crossed his face. What is Wally doing here? He only shows up for the biggest deals. Elena offered Wally a slight nod, a silent acknowledgement. Wally reached them, his face serious and completely devoid of the usual society grin. He didn't spare Marcus a glance. His attention was solely on Elena. "Miss Thorne, Vance," Wally corrected himself smoothly, using Elena's maiden name, which she had reverted to immediately after the divorce. "Forgive the intrusion, but time is of the essence. My car is waiting. Do you have a moment to sign these final documents? The will requires immediate acceptance of the terms, and the closing window is now." Marcus blinked. "Will? What is this?" "Wally, I'm finalizing a major merger. Can this wait? Is this some formality for Elias's estate? Elena, what paltry sum is he leaving you?" Wally Finch finally looked at Marcus. The look was not one of respect or even disdain. It was the look one gives to an inconvenient piece of furniture. "Mr. Thorne, this is neither a paltry sum nor a formality," Wally stated, his voice a low, gravelly counterpoint to the ballroom noise. He opened the briefcase on a nearby mahogany table, revealing a thick stack of documents bound in a crimson ribbon, topped by a signature page and an impressive fountain pen. "These documents," Wally continued, indicating the stack with the tip of the pen, "represent the final disposition of the entire Elias Vance estate and the Vance holding group. It encompasses all domestic and international assets, including Vance Towers, the Vance private equity portfolio, the majority stake in the Sterling Group's chief competitor, and all liquid capital. The estimated valuation is just north of $9 billion. A hush fell over the small circle of listeners. $9 billion. Marcus's jaw went slack. Tiffany's perfect, heavily lacquered expression cracked, her eyes darting between the pen, the documents, and Elena's steady face. Marcus stammered, his confident veneer dissolving into panicked disbelief. "9. But I thought the family, the foundation. Elias and I discussed some consulting opportunities." Wally gave a crisp, professional shake of the head. "Mr. Vance left a single directive, executed and notarized immediately before his passing. All assets, without exception, were bequeathed to Ms. Elena Vance, with immediate effect upon the acceptance and signing of these papers." He offered the pen, not to Marcus, but directly to Elena. Elena took the pen. The metal felt cool and solid in her hand. She looked at Marcus, whose face was a study in pure, unadulterated horror. The kind of horror that only the sudden, unexpected loss of colossal wealth can inspire. The man who had mocked her non-profit work and her quaint career, the man who had just flaunted his lesser success and his lesser woman, was now staring at the realization that she was about to become one of the wealthiest women in the city. The scale of the irony was breathtaking. "So, Elena," Marcus choked out, a thin bead of sweat appearing on his forehead. His tone shifted instantly, desperately trying to re-establish a connection, a claim. "Darling, this is incredible. I always knew Elias saw your potential. We should celebrate. This changes everything for us." He reached out, his hand grasping for her arm, a gesture of ownership he had been unable to shake even after the divorce. Elena smoothly moved her arm, keeping her eyes locked on his. She didn't utter a word. Instead, she bent over the table, placed the pen precisely on the signature line, and with a swift, elegant flourish, she signed her name, Elena Vance. The sound of the pen scratching across the high-quality paper was the only noise in the sudden silence of their corner of the ballroom. It sounded like the final, irrevocable tearing of Marcus Thorne's life plan. Wally Finch took the papers, sealed them back in the briefcase, and snapped the locks shut. The sound was a definitive click, signaling the end of one era and the violent, sudden beginning of Elena's revenge. "Congratulations, Madam Chairwoman," Wally said to Elena, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. He finally addressed Marcus, who was visibly shaking. "Mr. Thorne, I believe this now makes Ms. Vance the majority shareholder in the commercial rival of your fiancé's family firm. Enjoy the rest of the evening." With a curt bow, Wally ushered Elena away from the small crowd, leaving Marcus and Tiffany abandoned amidst the glittering, suddenly unforgiving chandeliers. Marcus's triumphant night had crashed and burned spectacularly. Elena had gone from the blueprint to the billionaire in the time it took to sign her name. The first sweet taste of revenge was hers. The next chapters would reveal the full extent of the drama, the twists in the will, and the hard karma awaiting Marcus and Tiffany. The Grand Astor Ballroom, which moments ago felt like Marcus Thorne's private stage, now felt like a very large, very public execution arena. The air of exclusivity and wealth hadn't dissipated, but the focus had violently shifted. Whispers, sharp and merciless, replaced the polite murmur of conversation. Every eye was fixed on Marcus, standing frozen next to Tiffany, whose rose-gold dress now seemed less like a shimmering statement and more like a target. Marcus's mind was a frantic, short-circuiting wire. $9 billion. Elias Vance. Elena. The math simply didn't compute, yet the presence of Wally Finch, the silent sealing of the briefcase, and Elena's calm, deliberate departure made the reality undeniable. He had spent the last year bragging about his brilliant divorce settlement, the one where he had expertly leveraged the community property laws to keep the bulk of the fast-moving capital, leaving Elena with her sentimental house and her poultry firm. Now she was exponentially wealthier than he could ever hope to be. Tiffany finally found her voice, a thin, panicked squeak. Marcus. What did he mean? Majority shareholder. Who is Vance's chief competitor? Marcus clenched his jaw, the muscle ticking furiously. He knew exactly who Wally meant. The Sterling Group, Tiffany's family's asset management firm, was heavily leveraged against Phoenix Holdings, a notoriously quiet, astronomically successful venture capital firm that Elias Vance had covertly built over the past 30 years. If Elena owned Phoenix, she didn't just compete with Tiffany's family, she held a thermonuclear option over their entire enterprise. "It's nothing, Tiff," Marcus hissed, trying desperately to recapture control, but his hands were shaking. "It's complex trust jargon. Elias was old. He was probably confused. Wally is being dramatic. I'll call my own lawyers in the morning. This is probably tied up in litigation for years." But his voice lacked conviction, and the sudden chill in the attitude of the surrounding guests, potential business partners who had moments ago been laughing at his jokes, told him everything. They weren't just curious. They were calculating. They were seeing a change in the financial hierarchy, and Marcus Thorne was plummeting fast. Elena, meanwhile, was gliding toward the exit with Wally. As they passed the velvet ropes separating the high rollers from the merely rich, Elena's serene composure finally faltered, replaced by a deep, weary sigh. "That was exhausting," she admitted to Wally. "Necessary, Madam Chairwoman," Wally replied, his professionalism unwavering. Elias wanted the delivery to be a public, unambiguous statement. He knew Marcus would be there, gloating. "He wanted you to sign the papers in his presence. The document stipulates that acceptance must be executed in a public forum where the executor feels complete emotional certainty in moving forward independently." A rather Elias-like flourish, wouldn't you agree? Elena smiled faintly. He always knew how to make a point, and yes, watching Marcus's face was complete emotional certainty. As they stepped outside, away from the cloying heat of the ballroom, Elena couldn't help but reflect on the truth of the inheritance. It wasn't a windfall, it was a legacy. 4 years earlier, Elena was still married to Marcus, still believing in his potential. But Elias Vance, her mentor and family friend since childhood, saw the toxicity beneath Marcus's charm. Marcus began aggressively pushing Elena to leave her design firm and focus on networking for his career. She resisted, finding solace in Elias, who was battling cancer. "You are not a supporting character, Elena," Elias had told her one evening in his study, filled with rare books and the scent of aged leather. "Marcus sees you as leverage. I see you as a successor." He had spent the next 3 years teaching her every facet of Phoenix Holdings, not just the spreadsheets, but the philosophy, ethical investment, long-term vision, and ruthless efficiency against corruption. He had quietly positioned her, trained her, and most crucially, watched her. Elias didn't trust his own family, whom he viewed as entitlement-driven vultures. He trusted Elena, the woman who refused to compromise her integrity, even when married to a man who had none. The final meeting, a week before Elias passed, was brief. "It's all yours, kid," he had rasped, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp. "The only condition is that you use it, not just to make more money, but to clean up the messes men like Marcus leave behind. Start with the Sterling Group. They're built on sand and shortcuts. They're his next target. Cut off the head of the snake before it even bites." Elias had orchestrated the entire dramatic execution of the will, knowing it would amplify the statement and prevent any immediate legal challenges based on undue influence or secrecy. It was a billion-dollar mic drop. Marcus was now cornered by a junior partner who had politely but firmly rescinded a verbal agreement for a significant loan. "Marcus, look," the junior partner stammered, avoiding eye contact. "The board's assessment of your firm's valuation was heavily dependent on your potential merger with Sterling. If the Vance Group is now actively targeting them, that entire foundation is unstable. We need to pause the capital release." Marcus felt the panic solidify into cold, hard fear. "Pause?" We shook hands. "This is a massive breach of faith. Sterling is fine. They're family practically." Tiffany, realizing her engagement to Marcus was rapidly losing its 9-figure valuation, pulled him aside, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. "Family? Marcus, you just told me your divorce was flawless. If she's worth $9 billion and you walked away with a few million, that settlement is a joke. My father will kill me. He needs this merger to happen." "The settlement was based on our marital assets," Marcus spat back, momentarily forgetting his audience. "This was a gift from Elias, post-marital, untouchable. It's luck, damn it, pure luck." "Luck?" Tiffany's eyes were wide with sudden, ugly realization. "Or was it because you treated Elena like dirt, slept with half the city, and she walked away with the only person who had real money? You chose the flashy blonde over the billionaire's protégé." She looked around, the ballroom suddenly seeming cheap and suffocating. "The Sterling merger? That's all we had. Now she's going to use Phoenix to gut us." Marcus grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "Listen to me. She can't just gut us. I know her. She's soft. She'll set up some charity wing or build a new hospital. She won't understand the mechanics of this kind of warfare. I'll talk to her. We have history. I can spin this. I can propose a partnership, a consultation fee. I can still save this." His desperation was pitiful but dangerous. He was in denial, clinging to the familiar pattern of manipulating Elena, believing her previous kindness was weakness. Just then, a sleek black screen on the wall, usually reserved for stock market tickers and news headlines, flashed an urgent notification. A news alert, disseminated by a well-placed media executive, Wally Finch, had undoubtedly called immediately after the signing. Breaking news. Vance Holding Group, valued at 9.3 B, bequeathed entirely to Elias Vance. New chairwoman announces immediate review of all competing asset firms. Below the headline was a picture of Elena, taken moments ago, looking calm, confident, and utterly untouchable. The article mentioned Elias Vance's strong ethical reservations about certain financial practices, hinting that the new chairwoman would be conducting an aggressive clean-up of the industry. Marcus stared at the screen, the image of Elena burning into his retina. Clean-up. She was coming for him. Tiffany yanked her arm free. "I'm calling Dad. You handle this, Marcus. I mean it. I'm not marrying a man who just became financially irrelevant overnight." She spun on her heel, her rose-gold dress now a retreating blur, leaving Marcus utterly alone in the suddenly hostile grandeur of the ballroom. Marcus looked back toward the exit, a terrifying truth dawning on him. Elias hadn't just given Elena money. He had given her a weapon, and the first target was clearly Marcus's inflated ego and fragile financial future. The game was far from over, but the rules and the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. Elena's sweet revenge was about to become a full-scale corporate dismantling. The karma was mobilizing. The next morning, the city wasn't just talking about Elias Vance, it was buzzing. Financial news channels ran non-stop segments on the $9.3 billion surprise and the abrupt, dramatic transfer of power at Vance Holding Group, now simply Vance Group. Elias Vance's final statement, ensuring the signing happened publicly, was hailed as a legendary power play. Elena sat in Elias's former penthouse office, now hers, high above the frantic city. The space was minimalist, dominated by a single, expansive view of Central Park, a constant reminder of the scale of her new responsibility. Wally Finch was across the long, antique desk, reviewing the first set of strategic actions. "The first order of business is cleaning house, Elena," Wally said, sliding a document across the desk. "Elias warned you about the Sterling Group. They are over-leveraged and built on paper transactions. Marcus's desperate merger attempt with them was a move to secure the capital needed to cover their systemic failures." Elena tapped the report detailing Phoenix Holdings' current assets. Phoenix owns 30% of Sterling's unsecured debt. That's enough to trigger a liquidity event if we call the loans. "More than enough," Wally confirmed. "But Elias was more ruthless. He ensured you inherited not just the debt, but the minority stake in Marcus's current firm, Thorn Asset Management. It's only 5%, but it's enough to demand a seat on the board and access to their internal financial statements." Elena smiled, a thin, cold expression. Elias had left her the legal equivalent of a skeleton key to Marcus's locked vault. "Set up the immediate board meeting for Thorn Asset Management," Elena instructed. "I want to see their books before they can shred them. Also, formally announce that Vance Group is pulling all credit lines and refusing any future services to the Sterling Group, effective immediately. I want the market to know we aren't just competing, we're disinfecting." Meanwhile, Marcus Thorn was enduring the professional apocalypse. He sat in his office, which now felt less like a seat of power and more like a sinking lifeboat. The junior partner from the night before had officially withdrawn the loan offer. Tiffany's father, Mr. Sterling, a man whose skin was as thin as his company's liquidity, had just finished a 10-minute tirade that ended with the distinct threat of calling off the engagement and potentially suing Marcus for misleading them about his financial stability. "It's not over," Marcus muttered, pacing. He remembered Elena's weakness, her empathy. He had used it for years. His vulnerability was always his most potent weapon. He grabbed his phone and called Elena's personal number, which he knew she hadn't changed since the divorce. It rang twice before she answered. "Elena." "Thank God," Marcus started, injecting his voice with a practiced blend of exhausted relief and intimate familiarity. "I knew you would take my call. Listen, I know last night was awkward, and this inheritance, it's amazing, truly incredible, but we need to talk privately about the future." Elena, listening on speakerphone while Wally watched, remained impassive. "I'm listening, Marcus." "Right. Look, Elias was a brilliant man, but he was old. He didn't understand modern finance. $9 billion is a huge burden, Elena. It's not like running a boutique design firm. The tax liabilities alone could cripple you. The infrastructure, the litigation risk. It's a lot for one person to manage, especially without the right support." He took a deep breath, executing his prepared beggar's gambit. "I've been running a major firm for years. I know the players, I know the pitfalls. We were married, Elena. We have history, we have trust. Let me come in as your chief operating officer, or better yet, a managing partner for Phoenix. I'll take a percentage, of course, but I can stabilize the transition, manage the portfolio, and introduce you to the truly powerful people you need to know. Think of it as a partnership, a rebirth. He had, in his warped mind, just presented her with a benevolent solution. He would graciously take half her burden and a large chunk of her wealth. This was his emotional fantasy, that she would still crave his validation and expertise, allowing him back into the golden circle he himself had destroyed. Elena let a silence stretch on, heavy and absolute. Marcus heard it, and his heart pounded with a mix of fear and residual hope. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice clear, calm, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Marcus, I appreciate you thinking of my challenges." "Good, see? I knew we could talk this through," he interjected eagerly. "However," she continued, cutting across his self-congratulation, "I have Wally Finch, who managed Elias Vance's personal estate for 40 years, as my senior counsel. I have a team of 500 analysts at Phoenix Holdings. The firm you just admitted was too complex for Elias to manage, now reporting to me. I have the resources of $9 billion, which, as I've recently discovered, purchases quite a lot of competency." She paused, delivering the surgical strike. "What I don't have, Marcus, is a need for a chief operating officer who uses company funds to pay for his fiancée's 2-carat blueprint ring, or a managing partner whose primary expertise is leveraged fraud and who is currently under audit review by his own board." Marcus went white. "Audit? What are you talking about?" "The 5% stake, Marcus," Elena said, her voice dropping slightly, becoming a razor's edge. "As of 2 hours ago, Vance Group is your largest minority shareholder. I exercised my right to call an emergency board meeting for Thorn Asset Management. It's in 20 minutes. I'll be attending remotely from this office. I've already dispatched my accounting team. They'll be looking very closely at the $10 million expenditure labeled miscellaneous business development from Q3 last year, the one that occurred simultaneously with your divorce and your acquisition of a certain rose gold-clad asset." The line went dead in Marcus's ear. He stared at the disconnected phone, the blood draining from his face. He had tried to manipulate her with his faux concern, and she had responded with a corporate nuclear strike. The $10 million was exactly where he had laundered the cash to pay off the extravagant ring, Tiffany's luxury apartment lease, and a massive down payment on a yacht he had planned to call the Blueprint. Marcus stumbled out of his office, yelling for his personal assistant. He had 20 minutes to try and block the auditors, but he knew Wally Finch would have locked the doors and the servers down already. The paranoia of his past actions was now manifesting as reality. Later that afternoon, Elena concluded the emergency board meeting for Thorn Asset Management. Marcus, flustered and defeated, had been forced to attend, watching Elena, poised and elegant on the screen, systematically dismantle his internal narratives. The board voted overwhelmingly to comply with Vance Group's demands, prioritizing the preservation of the firm's assets over Marcus's rapidly collapsing reputation. Marcus was stripped of all operational authority and placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation into the Miscellaneous Business Development Fund. As the virtual meeting concluded, Elena looked directly into the camera, knowing Marcus was watching. "Gentlemen, the Vance Group is committed to ethical long-term value. We will no longer tolerate partners who view assets as a personal piggy bank. Marcus, you have exactly 48 hours to vacate your office and provide all necessary login credentials to the new interim CEO. The cleanup has begun." The true weight of the karma was settling upon Marcus. Not just financial ruin, but the systematic stripping of his professional identity and the public exposure of his petty betrayals, all orchestrated by the woman he had dismissed as the Blueprint. His attempt at the beggar's gambit had cost him everything he had left. The next chapter would see the full collapse of his personal life, fueled by Tiffany's self-interested rage. The administrative leave quickly devolved into a full suspension, then a formal investigation. The $10 million Marcus had funneled was easily traced to personal expenditures for Tiffany, violating multiple fiduciary duties and triggering a cascade of regulatory nightmares. The once shimmering edifice of Marcus Thorne's life was crumbling under the weight of Elena's cold financial scrutiny. He arrived back at the luxury apartment he and Tiffany shared, an apartment, he now grimly realized, whose lease was paid for by the very miscellaneous business development fund being audited. The interior was a shrine to conspicuous consumption, white leather, mirrored surfaces, and abstract art that cost more than Marcus's first house. Tiffany was waiting for him. She wasn't wearing the rose gold dress, but a silk pajama set that somehow still looked aggressively expensive. She was nursing a very large glass of wine, and her face, usually a canvas of practiced beauty, was etched with pure, self-pitying fury. "You're telling me," Tiffany began, her voice dangerously quiet, "that the woman you divorced, the woman you called quaint and the blueprint, is now my father's single greatest threat, and that she is doing it using money that apparently should have been yours." "It was post-marital, Tiffany. It doesn't matter," Marcus roared, throwing his briefcase onto the white sofa, making a muffled, pathetic sound. "It's a witch hunt. Elena is using Elias's old connections to weaponize the market. She's trying to bankrupt me out of spite." "Spite," Tiffany laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Spite is telling her the ring was a blueprint. This, Marcus, is hard karma, and it's hitting me." She stood up, walking toward him, her movements predatory. "My father is pulling the merger. His lawyers are already drafting a statement. He's going to announce that the Sterling Group is severing all ties with Thorne Asset Management due to unspecified severe irregularities found during the pre-merger due diligence. He's throwing you under the bus, and he's using your name to save his own firm's reputation." Marcus staggered backward. "He can't. We had an agreement. Our relationship." "Our relationship," Tiffany cut in with lethal finality, holding up her hand, the massive diamond ring still glittering, "was predicated on the expectation that you were a rising star, a future billionaire. You are now a liability, Marcus, a massive corporate scandal." She extended her hand, palm up. "I need the ring back." Marcus stared at the diamond, the physical symbol of his triumph over Elena, the ostentatious, tasteless proof that he had moved on to a superior, newer model. "What? No, it's an engagement ring. We're getting married," he protested weakly. "No, we're not," Tiffany said, her eyes ice cold. "That 5-carat cushion cut was collateral, Marcus. My father is already facing a liquidity crunch because of Elena's company targeting the sterling debt. That ring is worth $500,000, and my mother wants it for her auction this week to raise quick capital. It was never truly yours." She grabbed his hand, pulled the ring off his finger with a sharp, wrenching motion, and dropped it into the pocket of her pajamas. The removal felt like a physical amputation of his ego. "And about this apartment," Tiffany continued, her voice gaining momentum. "I'm taking back the lease. You have 24 hours to get your things out. I'm moving my brother in. The press will be crawling over this place by Friday when the scandal breaks, and I refuse to be collateral damage." Marcus, defeated, slumped into the sofa. His new wife, the living embodiment of his perceived success, was deserting him and liquidating his assets in the same breath. His emotional fantasy of having the superior woman had evaporated, replaced by the grim reality that Tiffany valued her father's solvency far more than his love. The financial noose tightens. Meanwhile, Elena was not resting. She was now using her vast resources to address the real-world mess Marcus and the Sterling Group had created. Phoenix Holdings was not just a wealth accumulation engine. Elias had structured it with a substantial impact investing division that Elena now commanded. Her first major public move, announced late that evening, wasn't about seizing assets. It was about protecting victims. Marcus's firm had quietly funneled thousands of middle-class investors into a series of highly volatile, opaque real estate trusts managed by the Sterling Group, promising guaranteed returns. The investigation showed these trusts were virtually empty, their capital siphoned off to cover the Sterling Group's corporate gambling losses. Elena released a statement. Effective immediately, the Vance Group will use $500 million of its liquid capital to purchase the toxic assets within the Sterling Thorn Real Estate Trust at 100% of their advertised value. We are doing this not for profit, but to ensure that the hard-working families who were misled and leveraged by irresponsible management are made whole. The full forensic audit of Thorn Asset Management will be released to the public and regulatory bodies tomorrow morning. This move was a masterpiece of sweet revenge. It made Elena a public hero, prevented a major financial panic among small investors, and simultaneously confirmed the criminal negligence of Marcus and the Sterling Group. It was an act of benevolence that served as the most devastating corporate weapon imaginable. The next morning, Marcus was packing a small suitcase, his hands shaking, when he saw the news on a massive wall-mounted screen. He watched, horrified, as a financial analyst praised Elena's ethical intervention and called Marcus Thorn's activities a brazen example of predatory finance. His phone rang. It was his bank. Mr. Thorn, due to regulatory concerns and the ongoing investigation at Thorn Asset Management, we must regrettably inform you that all lines of credit have been frozen and your personal accounts have been restricted pending the audit results. You have access only to a small humanitarian allowance. Marcus dropped the phone. Humanitarian allowance. The man who had mocked Elena's charity work was now living on a stipend approved by his bank, likely to prevent him from fleeing the country. He had nothing left. No wife, no job, no money, and soon no home. He looked around the apartment, the white marble, the custom furniture. All of it a reminder of the false god he had worshipped. He knew he was facing not just bankruptcy, but potential criminal charges. His only remaining asset was the faint, desperate belief that if he could just see Elena, talk to her, he could convince her to drop the investigation, to remember the man she loved. A final reckless attempt at manipulating her humanity. He had to try one last, desperate power play. The hard karma was now fully operational. Marcus had nowhere left to go. After being forced out of the penthouse, he was staying in a dreary, overpriced corporate hotel room, watching his life dissolve through cable news segments. He was a pariah. Even his former associates, men he had made millions for, refused his calls. He realized his power was never inherent. It was always derived from the money he controlled. Without the money, he was just a desperate, mediocre man. His descent into desperation culminated in a risky, potentially foolish plan, a public confrontation. He knew Elena was scheduled to speak at the annual Vance Art Foundation Gala, a prestigious, well-attended event Elias had always adored. It was her first major public appearance since the takeover, and it was his last chance to appeal to her, to threaten her, or, at the very least, to cause enough chaos to distract from his own legal woes. He managed to borrow an ill-fitting suit and slipped into the gala using an old media pass. Elena, bathed in the soft glow of the museum's ancient artifacts, was magnificent. She was giving a poised, compelling speech, announcing a massive new endowment for the foundation, emphasizing Elias's commitment to ethical stewardship and community. She looked like a true titan, not just of finance, but of principle. Marcus pushed through the crowd, sweat beading on his forehead. As Elena concluded her speech to rapturous applause, Marcus burst through the security cordon. "Elena, we need to talk, now!" His voice was raw, laced with panic, echoing off the high ceilings of the marble hall. The entire room froze. Camera phones instantly went up. This was the YouTube drama moment Marcus craved, a public spectacle where he hoped to gain leverage. Elena didn't flinch. She simply turned, her expression one of profound disappointment. Wally Finch and two private security personnel moved instantly to block Marcus, but Elena waved them back slightly. She wanted this confrontation. She needed to deliver the final crushing blow in person. "Marcus," Elena said, her voice amplified by the microphone she still held. "This is a private function. You are violating a restraining order put in place after your recent financial misconduct. You should leave." "Restraining order? What misconduct? You're bankrupting me, Elena." Marcus was pleading now, his swagger entirely gone. "You're destroying everything I worked for. This isn't revenge. It's criminal persecution. You have everything, the money, the power, the public adoration. Why do you need to humiliate me like this?" He tried to look remorseful, the poor victim of a scorned woman's vendetta. "Remember our life, Elena? The good years? I made you. I introduced you to this world. You owe me. Stop this investigation and I will disappear. I'll sign whatever you want." Elena gripped the microphone tighter, her eyes burning with a decade of suppressed pain and recent insight. "You want to know why, Marcus?" she challenged, her voice ringing with clarity and conviction. "I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing this because Elias Vance didn't just leave me a fortune, he left me a responsibility to clean up the toxic waste left by people like you." She paused, then delivered the critical, soul-crushing twist. "You said you knew the whole story. You mocked me for waiting on Elias for a decade. But what you, in your vanity, never realized was the condition of the will, the hidden codicil." The room was silent, hanging on every word. "The Vance Group is not a simple portfolio, Marcus. Elias Vance spent the last 10 years secretly funding the acquisition of every single one of your worst mistakes. Every time you left a vendor unpaid, every time you leveraged a client into ruin, every time you exploited a small business to fuel your ego, Elias bought the debt, the land, or the company. He collected your failures." Marcus stared, aghast. No, that's insane." "It's accountability," Elena stated firmly. "The hidden codicil stipulates that I, as the sole heir and chairwoman, am required to spend 70% of the inheritance, over $6 billion, over the next 5 years to right every single wrong committed by the companies and individuals Elias deemed morally bankrupt, and who directly or indirectly caused distress to his ethical enterprises. This includes your victims, Marcus." She lowered her voice, speaking to him alone, though the microphone carried her words to every corner of the room. "Elias Vance didn't leave me $9 billion to get rich. He left me a massive, complex repair job, a $6 billion act of financial atonement. I am legally obligated to fix your messes, to pay back your debt, and to restore the lives of the people you crushed on your way up. I have to spend the next 5 years cleaning up your mess." The implication was staggering. The inheritance wasn't pure profit. It was a vast, almost impossible burden. Elias's genius twist was forcing Elena to become a righteous avenger, making her commitment to his downfall a legal and moral necessity, not just a personal choice. "You're wrong," Marcus mumbled, his mind struggling to process the scale of the burden. "You can fight the will. You can litigate that condition." "I signed the acceptance document, Marcus," Elena reminded him, a faint, rueful smile touching her lips. "The one Wally Finch brought to the ballroom. My signature confirmed my agreement to all terms, including the codicil. I accepted the burden, Marcus. I chose to use this power not to forget you, but to systematically undo you. Your destruction is literally written into my business plan." The look of ultimate defeat washed over Marcus. He hadn't just lost the money. He had become the reason for the money's existence. He was the villain in Elena's new multi-billion-dollar origin story. Just as the security team moved to apprehend him, a new, terrible twist arrived. Wally Finch stepped forward, taking the microphone from Elena. "Mr. Thorne, We have received confirmation that the $10 million in business development funds you misappropriated was traced to several shell companies linked to a high-ranking official at the International Banking Commission. Your actions have now triggered a cross-border regulatory investigation. The U.S. Attorney's Office has just issued a warrant for your immediate arrest on multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. Marcus looked wildly around the room, the opulent museum suddenly feeling like a jail cell. His last, desperate attempt at confrontation had accelerated his complete downfall. He had sought a dramatic exit, and now he had one, in handcuffs. As the security personnel cuffed him, Marcus saw a face in the crowd he hadn't noticed before. Tiffany standing with her father, her face pale with shock, holding the diamond ring in a small velvet pouch. She wasn't there to support him. She was there to ensure her family's distance from his collapse. She didn't even look him in the eye. Marcus was dragged away, shouting incoherent denials and threats that dissolved into the din of the shocked crowd. Elena watched him go, feeling not elation, but a deep, profound sense of closure. The revenge was complete, the karma delivered, and the terrifying $6 billion responsibility was hers to bear. 6 months later, the chaos had subsided, replaced by a new, powerful order. Elias Vance was no longer just the chairwoman. She was a force of nature in the financial world, her actions setting a new gold standard for ethical investment and corporate responsibility. The Vance Group's Atonement Initiative, born from Elias Vance's hidden codicil, was well underway. The $6.5 billion obligation wasn't crippling. Instead, it was proving to be a catalyst. By strategically buying up bad debt and investing in the revitalization of the exploited businesses, Elena was turning forgotten failures into profitable, ethical success stories. She had not only protected Marcus's victims, but transformed them into allies, creating a powerful, loyal ecosystem for the Vance Group. The press loved it. Elias Vance, the quiet woman who had refused to play Marcus Thorne's game, was hailed as the billionaire benefactress, the anti-Marcus. The fate of the fallen Marcus Thorne's fall was total and irreversible. He had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk due to the international money laundering charges and the severity of the fraud uncovered by Elena's audit team. His trial was a media circus. Every transaction, every betrayal, every petty abuse of power was laid bare. He was eventually convicted and sentenced to a substantial prison term. The close third-person view found him years later, his good looks eroded by time and bad prison food, his swagger replaced by a vacant stare. He spent his days in the prison library, reading old financial journals, forever clinging to the fantasy that he could still manage the market, forever resentful of the $9 billion that was used entirely to erase the trace of his existence. His karma was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing suffocation, the total, irrevocable loss of the power he worshipped. And Tiffany? The trophy wife found her own level. Her father's firm, the Sterling Group, could not survive the liquidity crisis caused by Elena's actions and the public scandal surrounding Marcus. The firm was eventually sold off for parts, and the Sterling name was tarnished. Tiffany, stripped of her unlimited expense accounts and forced to work a succession of low-level marketing jobs, discovered that her looks and designer clothes could not replace a fundamental understanding of integrity or industry. She became one of the countless cautionary tales in the city, her rose-gold dress now just a faded symbol of a brief, selfish ambition. The ring, which her mother had sold, purchased exactly 3 high-end charity meals for homeless families displaced by one of Marcus's disastrous real estate schemes. The weight of the crown. Elena, however, bore the weight of the crown with grace and competence. Her simple, ethical approach proved to be a powerful disruptor. She realized that Elias Vance hadn't just given her money. He had given her purpose. Her revenge had not been about Marcus, but about correcting the cosmic imbalance he represented. One evening, Wally Finch, now a trusted friend and co-pilot, found Elena looking out over the city lights from her high office. "You know, Elena," Wally remarked, "I've seen a lot of people inherit billions. It usually either corrupts them or crushes them. You're the first one who seems to have been fortified by it." Elena turned, a genuine, peaceful smile on her face. "It's because of the codicil, Wally. The money isn't mine to keep, it's mine to deploy. It reminds me every day that the true cost of my divorce wasn't the assets I lost to Marcus, but the integrity he tried to force me to surrender. Elias gave me a way to buy back that integrity, not just for myself, but for everyone else he hurt." She walked to her desk, picking up a framed photograph. It wasn't Elias or her parents. It was a photo of her and Marcus taken on their wedding day, full of naive hope. "I was once married to a man who thought ambition was entitlement," she reflected. "He thought power was the ability to take without consequence. He chose the flashy, disposable woman because he couldn't stomach the idea of a partner with substance. He showed off his new life, trying to make me feel small." Elena gently placed the picture face down. "But in that moment, when I signed those papers, I realized my real value was never tied to his approval or his status. It was tied to the fact that I had the moral certainty to walk away from him in the first place, and the competence to handle the legacy of $9 billion. He showed off his trophy. I signed my inheritance. He got the fleeting moment of superiority, and I got the enduring power of redemption." The sweet revenge was complete. Marcus's final humiliation was knowing that the entire Vance empire, the empire he had always craved, was dedicated to dismantling his memory, one ethical investment at a time. Elena had proved that the greatest power wasn't inherited, it was earned through character and used for justice. Wow, what a journey! From the venomous snobbery of a cheating ex-husband showing off his shiny new trophy to the spectacular $9 billion reversal of fortune. Elena's story is a powerful reminder that true value is found not in the fleeting shine of a diamond, but in the unshakable steel of one's own character. Marcus Thorne thought he won the divorce by grabbing assets and ego-stroking his way to the top, but he learned the hard way that when you burn a bridge, you often doom yourself to be the one who drowns in the ashes. The ultimate moral of this American soap opera: karma doesn't just knock. Sometimes it delivers a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit right to your front door. If you loved watching Elena deliver this sweet surgical revenge and seeing hard karma hit back, hit that like button right now. Which part of Marcus's downfall was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more epic stories of drama, revenge, and unexpected twists delivered straight to you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this video with a friend who appreciates a good life lesson served ice cold. Until next time, stay ethical, stay sharp, and remember that integrity is the only investment that always pays out.